Uma, Yahuwah, we are Futsu Yibeka, Yanusa Misaneka, arise of you, O Yahuwah. Let your enemies be scattered, and let those that hate thee flee from before thee. Let all of Yasharah, Israel, who love, worship, and praise Yahuwah, give him thanks by saying hallelujah.
Shalom and welcome to Into All Truth, and we thank you for everyone who has donated. We thank you for everybody who picked up our calendar or Chaya Eat Life and Fast. Both are tools for Hebraic living and lifestyle. One is the Divine Order, approved foods, healthy foods, and of course the other is all the Moedim, the appointed times that help you to line up with Yah's divine order, so that you can be alive and remain and enter into the kingdom, okay, and hear from him. Anyway, may the Ruach HaKodesh lead you into all truth and show you things to come. Hallelujah. May the seed of the word be planted in your heart and bring forth fruit unto righteousness in the name of Yahushua HaMashiach. So we're back to Shem's lot, and we're going to talk a lot about the northern kingdom and some of the descendants of Shem. And of course, the key indicator of Shem's land is that it's the only place where the lions are. So we're going to be wondering where the lions are. And these are lions with manes, not mountain lions. These lions wear a crown. According to the book, The Jews of Africa, it talks about Egypt being regarded as the cradle of the Jewish race. So it says the countries dealt with in this work are in geographical progression from east to west. Abyssinia, including Ethiopia, Egypt, Tripoli, Tunis, Algiers, and Morocco. Egypt may be regarded as the cradle of the Jewish race. Did I tell you? And in all probability, it has never been without a Hebrew or Jewish population since the days when Joseph and his brethren laid the foundations of the nation. Now, I don't think that's true because obviously Egypt is in the west, where the most pyramids on the planet are and the biggest ones. And it's the west. The west is Babylon. I definitely believe that the tribes of Joseph had something to do with laying the foundations of Egypt. But it says, all other countries, in all other countries of Northern Africa, the Jewish population has resulted from a later immigration, and in some cases from successive waves of immigration. Much of the history of this colonization has been lost in the lapse of time and even in periods more nearly approximating to the Middle Ages. The records must be considered obscure, legendary, or doubtful when examined from the rigid historical standpoint. This is more recent. In the course of the following narrative, it has often been necessary to thread together data supplied by travelers, historians, and writers whose own works have been merely compilations from the works of others, and the results achieved may be reasonably questioned by critics to whom documentary evidence matters. So anyway, he goes into the story of the Jews of Sudan as related in the Abyssinian section of the book. So, so much of this now is just being proven in all the books that are older, you know. But I wanted to show you this image because this is the Semen Mountains, Shemen Mountains, Rofs. These are the mountains of the Shemites. Okay, the Ethiopian highlands. There's highlands in Britain, and there's highlands here. Same term. All right. So let's get a bit more. We talked about Egypt in the last documentary. We're going to get into Ethiopia here more so. We're going to start with Africa South and the scattering from North Africa to Sub-Saharan Africa. Then we'll head up into the north, into Europe, and then back again into the scattering into Africa. And finally, I'm going to end off with some genetic proofs. So that's coming up at the end. So I thank you for watching, and let's get into it. From John Ogilvy's book, Africa, page 34. We're now talking about the scattering of Ephraim from Europe. And Africa says, and Judah. Many Yehudi also were scattered over the region. See that the F again is S. From natives boasting themselves of Abraham's seed inhabiting both sides of the river Niger. Others are Asian strangers, so Assyrian strangers. Okay, there it is again. Who fled thither either from the desolation of Jerusalem by Vespasian or from Judea, wasted and depopulated by the Romans, Persians, Saracens, and I think that's Cretians, or else such as came out of Europe whence they were banished. Okay, so they were banished out of Europe, out of some parts of Italy in 1342, out of Spain in 1462, out of the Low Countries in 1350, France 1403, England in 1422. There's all differ in habit and are divided into several tribes having no dominion, though both wealthy and numerous, but despised of all nations, and so abominated by the Turks that they are not to be admitted to be Mahometans unless baptized, and then otherwise made use of to receive their customs and gather in their taxes. So they're just exploited for their gifts and talents and to get their money. Okay, so this is part of the scattering of the Assyrian captivity. So over here is Assyrian, and this is from Dirk Lang, who's talking about the Yoruba tradition. So I talked about that in my last video on the Arab slave trade, when I discussed the four carpenters. Really, you should watch that video. That video is so shut down and silenced. Nobody's watching it, and it's got so much information in it. But anyway, the Yoruba traditions of Provence are claiming immigration from the Near East and are basically correct. According to the Oyo Yoruba tradition, the ancestral Yoruba saw the Assyrian conquest of the Israelite kingdom from the 9th and 8th centuries BC from the perspective of the Israelites. After the fall of Samaria in 722 BC, they were deported to eastern Syria and adopted the ruling Assyrian kings as their own. The collapse of the Assyrian Empire is, however, mainly seen through the eyes of the Babylonian conquerors of Nineveh in 612 BC. This second shift of perspective reflects the disillusionment of the Israelite and Babylonian deportees from Syria, Palestine towards the Assyrian oppressors after the defeat of the Egypto-Syrian forces at Carchemish in Syria in 605. Numerous deportees followed the fleeing Egypto-Assyrian troops to the Nile Valley before continuing their migration to sub-Saharan Africa. So what they're saying is that, okay, here was the Assyrian captivity, and these would be the lands of like the Northern Kingdom, okay? And so they were captive of the Assyrians. Now they're still imagining this is Israel, but I believe the Northern Kingdom is all around here. And so they were sent in all directions. One of the directions they were taken was down into Egypt, which I think as the kingdoms were dissolving, they were likely settling in Egypt. As we know, Simon of Cyrene was coming from Egypt at the time of Yahusha, at the time of the Savior, right? So there were a lot of these Babylonian spirituality following Shemites who were mixing more with the Egyptians, and Esau settling in Egypt for a season under that, mixed empire of Egyptian culture, and then scattering further into West Africa, into these regions here, where the Hausa are, and the Fulani are. Okay, and so the Yoruba are considered a mixed tribe of both Edomite, perhaps Ishmael, and Israel, northern and southern kingdom. Okay, but primarily 10 tribes. And so this is where they traveled, is what this researcher is saying. And so this is the migration of Ephraim, is what they're saying. Okay. So there's this Arabian historian, Tariq, and he talks about how the progeny of Noah left the country of Babel and went to the west, crossed the Euphrates, and continued to Egypt. Now, I don't agree with that, because Egypt is North America, so, you know, it's more of those kind of lies, right? But the Zagwa dynasty, remember we talked about that before? The Zagwa dynasty around the Nile, they were an Israelite dynasty, right? And so they settled in Canaan. So this is the land of Canaan, the land of Israel, not Egypt, not North America. There's really only one set of pyramids here, and that's on the Giza Strip, pyramids of Giza. So, long story short, historians see these 5 surviving kingdoms that scattered in this direction. All right. They left Yemen and Lake Chad, and then they went into the central Hausa state. And it talks about the people who went, and it says, Oduduwada traveled with God's sons, the tribe of God, into Nigeria, basically, from North Africa, likely Egypt, and then settled in what was Nigeria. And this is according to Yoruba oral history and Obiaku, a Nigerian historian. And he says that the Yorubas originate from the Sudan, or what is known as Kush, Ethiopia. So, and we know Ethiopia is a mix of tribes, right? It's a mix of Kushites, like Hamites basically, and because of their being descendants of Abraham, right? And Dan and Manasseh and so on. Okay, so it's not just Kushites. And then it says the current Yoruba Jewish population claim to come from Israel or from the tribe of Ephraim, and they're said to have been driven to Yorubaland from Morocco. So that's the northern kingdom. Remember, I showed you several videos before when we were looking at Prester John, that Morocco was a place where the Ephraimites were and where they did a lot of their ship trade from. Okay, even from around 11 to 900 BC. Okay, and it says they were driven to Yorubaland from Morocco by Muslims and eventually mingled in with the Yoruba people. These Black Jews in southern Nigeria are called Omo Yakoyam, or strange people by the native Africans, but these Black Jews call themselves Benai Ephraim, sons of Ephraim, are the Yoruba people, and they observe Jewish customs, among which are the great holy days and the naming of children on the 8th day. So you can go to HebrewIgbo.com to find that. And so there's this book out called Memories of Absence that refers to the Black Jews in Morocco. Okay, it says majority of Israelite tribes resided under the authority of the house of Joseph, which was ruled by the tribe of Ephraim just prior to the expulsion of the northern kingdom of Israel in 722 BCE. many Moorish Ephraimites of the house of Joseph. So Joseph fled to Arabia, where they became known as Beni Cainka tribe. So they were mixing in with Cain, right? While others settled in the Horn of Africa, Ethiopia, right? We were just saying that, Dan and Manasseh, and became known as the Ephraim, right? Remember we said that one of the sons of Manasseh was named Aphar. Some of the members of Aphar were more specifically referred to as the Danakil, meaning of the Israelite tribe of Dan. Many of the Moorish Ephraimites, Aphar, continued to move westward, ultimately settling in Morocco. Now, I believe they were already there. Mauritania and Mali in North Africa, and they became known as the Bani Ephraim, meaning children of the tribe of Ephraim, while their tribal lands were known as the land of the Afri, or Ephraimites. All right, so here's some of the old images of them. You know, I don't know who knows? These could be them, could not be them. We don't know, right? But it says that the Moorish Ephraimite queen, and I talked about this in my Negro to Bianco series. We talked about the wars with the Arabs as they go up into Europe, and Tariq and Massa Musa fighting on behalf of the Arabs to take over Europe, right? And so we mentioned the Moorish Ephraimite queen called Kahina, because that was their land. It was North Africa and Europe. That was the Northern Kingdom. I believe that. And it says in 1311, Abakur II, the emperor of Mali, set sail across the Atlantic with a 1,000-vessel fleet, and thus began the settlement of the house of Joseph in the Americas. The voyage is recorded by the Egyptian historian Ibn Fadullah al-Umari. 4 Dene tribes, Moravian tribes, and Micah again was from Moorish Gath, right? So the Dene tribes, the Umari tribes, so Mori, and this is why the 10 tribes can't ignore the term Moor as being part of their culture, because it's actually embedded in scripture and attached to their name. Okay, the tribe Moorish Gath. So here's another attachment to the word Oranmian. Okay, so Oranmian, Mayan, right? They were known, Joseph was known as the Mayans in America, in the true Atlanta, America, Egypt, right? As the Mayan, and Oran is Orion. Remember, we said that above Egypt was Orion, the age of Or, Beelgeuse, house of bread, house of the Jews, the Israel, that's all in Egypt, okay? So as for Oramayan, the name seems to stand for Jacob, son of Isaac, also called Israel, the Epimos ancestor of the Israelites, in view of its derivation from Orin or heaven, Oran. So remember Orion, the first component part of the name Oranayan, Oranmayan, is cognate with the Semitic Shemin or heaven. So Shemayim, remember we talked about that in the name video. Okay, when you check out the name of Yah, the same as for Simoramus, high heaven, Shem Moras, right? High heaven, sometimes thought to be an epithet of the patriarch Jacob. More generally, Orion's key position in both the Oroyo tradition of oral creation account provides him with the characteristic of a central figure of the Israelite legend and mythology. And of course, it says there's a reference here to, it is therefore plausible that neglecting the last minor kings of Israel, Oro tradition concentrates on Oluboki or Jeroboam as the last ruler of the Israelite kingdom before its destruction and the deportation of the people. And now I went into that in the last video, Jeroboam. All right. So the Assyrians settled in West Africa. So Assurabalit, Sargon of Akkad, right? So Esau, the Assyrian king, settled the Yoruba and 10 tribes, beginning with the figureheads of 3 major states of the Fertile Crescent: Sargon of Akkad, Ibrahim of Israel, Daku Hammurabi of Babylonia. It continues with 4 kings standing for the Neo-Assyrian expansion: Ful or Fulani, right? These are the Fulani, okay? Or Tiglath-Pileser. And 3 other kings representing Eurasian, Elamite, and Hittite deportees. Deportees included also, or in other words, also deported people such as the Kassites, Babylonians, Elamites, Urartians, Hittites, Arameans, and of course the Israelites. And remember, I always say this, that remember, if members of Ephraim, Manasseh, and Simeon returned to build the second temple. So it wasn't always everybody. And so again, here is that captivity. And here are some of the descendants of the Ephraimites still in Mauritania. One of the principal things Noah says regarding his son Shem and the blessing of Shem is that he says he knew the Garden of Eden is the Holy of Holies and the dwelling of Yahuwah, and Mount Sinai, the center of the desert, and Mount Zion, the navel of the earth. And these 3 were created as holy places facing each other. And he blessed Eluah, the Elohim of Elohims, who had put the word of Yahuwah into his mouth, and Yahuwah forevermore. And he knew that a blessed portion and a blessing had come to Shem and his sons unto the generations forever, the whole land of Eden. So one of the ways that we can look for the land, and again, this is still theory, is we can look for these great mountains that face each other and the blessed land. Okay, so one of the things that I want to look at is where the highest mountains in the world are, because Jubilees is very clear that these 3 mountains face each other at the center of the earth, the navel of the earth, and they're the tallest mountains in the world. And the tallest mountains, I've already done videos on this, and I'm not going to do comparative analysis in this video, but I've talked about it in other videos of mine. These are the tallest mountains in the world. They try to lie and say it's in Hawaii, including everything underwater, or, you know, they come up with various ways. But there are 3 large mountains in Africa. Kilimanjaro is the largest mountain in the world, from base to top, not from sea level to top, okay? And that is in Tanzania. Notice that Yah is at the end of the name of these 2 countries. Mount Kenya is the 2nd tallest. And then, of course, in the Congo, you have Mount Stanley. All right, also in Ethiopia, so Djibouti is right around the Horn of Africa. And this is like the door to Africa. And this is part of Ethiopia. And I believe that this is around, all of this is around the land of Judah, Yehuda. And that includes the great rivers and everything. These are all where the great mountains are. And this has been said in other people's videos. But some of the tallest and best situated mountains in the world, including Ross, are in Ethiopia. Baal Mountains. Now that's Baal, like Baal, right? Ross Mountains, because Esau's ruling in that area, right? So he's naming things after Baal-zebub and stuff. Baal Mountains, Baal Mountains. But we see how well situated and comparatively tall they are in relation to Mount Kenya and the other mountains. And so the scripture is very clear that these great mountains face each other in the land of Yah, Ethiopia. So they're great military situated mountains where you could also do farming and be well protected. And this has been gone over in videos by other teachers. Here's Lake Victoria, which was called Abyssinia. Okay. But I believe that, and see this mountain range, see visually how much it stands out just from looking at the map, the height of this area compared to Kenya, Congo, Tanzania, and the height of their mountains. It's quite comparable right here. There seems to be a range all along here. And this one is circular at the top and well defensible. And then beyond it are all these green lands where you could grow crops and be protected. So it's well situated. And this is the door. This is called the Horn of Africa. So I just want you to consider that with respect to what we said about Ethiopia. And here's what the land looks like. These are the Tigray Mountains, Tigray, Ethiopia. So we see a lot of high mountains. These are the people. Now, obviously, Edom is very much mixed in there, but if you're Edom and you're an Edomite, you would have wanted that promise of the land of Israel that your ancestors lost out on. When Jacob got it, it was preordained he should get it by Yah. But look at this. Look at all these high plateaus where you could grow things on, yet they're defensible. They have this Timket festival every year, and they're celebrating the baptism of Yahusha, and everyone gets baptized again. Everyone dresses in white. There's all kinds of drumming. You see the people, a lot of them look very much like African Americans. So on the 19th of January, it is celebrated. So that's basically like around the time of Tabernacles. It would be like kind of fall for us, like September, because remember, everything's upside down there, right? And it's celebrated on the 11th of Tar. And they're commemorating the baptism of Yahusha, and it takes place over 3 days. And they're Orthodox Christians, over 43% of them. So this is what became of a lot of the tribes of Israel, seem to remain in that land or remain amongst the other sons of Abraham. So I just wanted to share that with you. So I don't know if this is Esau's Christ, or because they are very Orthodox, right? But this is a people that you see walking in all of this, even though they're mixed. And you see the priests wearing the red and the blue and so on of the Levitical colors and that and so on. But they're also wearing hats that are not of Yah, right? Because you have Esau is ruling the world, right? So Esau would be in that land. Look at how they represent it with some tribal, weird-looking guy with all kinds of markings on his face. But you look at the actual people, that's how they sell it and market it, right? TripAdvisors. But the reality is this how it looks? Women are wearing head coverings. The men are wearing a mix of head coverings, either the proper Hebrew turbans, or something that is more like the Muslim head coverings. So this is a mixed nation, mixed religions, mixed people. Possibly and very likely all of the sons of Abraham, descendants of Abraham. It's all 8 of his sons and their descendants. Right, so we're going to head a little further north now. I'm going to use a book today called Ireland as a reference for this study. Now, it has a lot of inaccuracies in it because it misinterprets a lot of Hebrew. It's leaning towards the Gentiles being Israel, all of that kind of stuff. But it does have some useful information in it, so I'll be correcting some stuff as I use it. But what I'm going to do is first begin with these book references, a few references describing the people, the land, their cultural practices, so that we can get a better sense of the geography. And then later on, I'll touch on the geography once again. We've mentioned a little bit about Ireland, but overall, it's important to understand that Western Europe is the land of the Shemites, or of the Chaldees. Okay, Britannia Covenant. It was the covenant that was made both between. It was the covenant made both between Noah and Yahuwah, and it was the covenant made between Abraham and Yahuwah. And the land of Abraham is defined as being between the great river Euphrates and the Sea of Egypt. So it would be all of this land. So what this book, Ireland, Ur of the Chaldees, talks about is that it says Haran died before his father Terah in the land of his nativity, Ur of the Chaldees. So this is what Yah says to Abraham after Haran dies. He said to him, I am Yahuwah who brought thee out of Ur of the Chaldees to give thee this land to inherit it. And Nehemiah speaks of Ur of the Chaldees, saying, Thou art Yahuwah, the Eluah, who did choose Abram and brought him forth out of Ur of the Chaldees and gave him the name of Abraham. Now, Ur means flame or fire, and it's a city in Babylonia, city of the Chaldeans, and later they called it Iraq or Yarak, which means moon. So they replaced the actual fire or light of Yah, which is the eternal flame, with worshiping the darkest star of all, the moon. Okay, the darkest of all of the great luminaries, which is the moon. Enoch says the moon is filled up with the light of the sun. So it's charged by the light of the sun. It's given its light by the sun. This points to the time of Abraham's migration out of the land of Ur of the Chaldees into the land of Canaan, which is really the land of Israel, okay, which was the true land of the Israelites, but Canaan just went and took it. And so Ur means flame, but we're going to go into that in a second, but Ab means father, and we're going to talk about that. That's the prefix of Abraham's name, meaning Abba, father. Now, in this book, there's a lot of error, as I've said, not very well researched in certain ways, but she says it means serpent. It doesn't, it means Abba, Aleph Bet, the head of the house. Everyone knows Abba means father. Okay, so let's talk about Ireland and Western Europe being the land of Ur of the Chaldees. Having we consider fully introduced the question that Chaldea was in the west of Europe, it becomes necessary to refer here in connection with Ur to an old Bible personage of importance, the grandson of Arphaxad, Eber or Heber. And there is found in Irish tradition an Eber whose name was given to Ireland, which is received in the word Hibernia, so Hibernia. And Hebrew means covenant or Brit. That's why I just pointed to it. So a covenant was made with Abraham and Yah, and a covenant was made with Noah and Yah, and that is Brit here. Bayit, Resh, Yod, Hey. Okay, that's Brit, covenant. Ireland has preserved to the present time more distinct marks of the ancient Ur than can be pointed to in any other country, whether of Asia or Europe. That would be Eastern Europe. Besides Ireland having once the name of Hibernia from Hebrew. Derived of Hebrew in England and Scotland. In Scotland, the Hebrides. In England, the old name of York or Ibericum. So guys, I forgot the T in Brit. It should also have a T at the end. So my apologies for that. I have to correct that. I miswrote that. It's got a T at the end, Brit. So York was called Ibericum. So the land of the Hebrews, right? And York, rock. So eventually fell into moon worship, right? It may appear as the argument unfolds itself that the balance of proof will rest on the side of the Irish Eber having been a veritable Hebrew. A stronghold of Hebrew was Iberia, a name under which Spain was once known. Spain, so we're talking about Western Europe. A great deal of mystery that surrounds Eber may be cleared away when we remember our teaching that the scripture Hebrew was Chaldean first, and then Hebrew, and afterwards Israelite. And that is recorded in Milesius, the father of Eber of Ireland. And he came with his son out of Iberia to Ireland. Iberia and Tarshish are acknowledged by most Bible commentaries to be as one place, that is Spain, because now the Gentiles have taken over Spain, right? Tarshish. The people from Tarshish are Gentiles. They're descendants of Japheth. So now they've taken over the identity of Israel, right? So they're there, calling it Tarshish. All right. And so this is why in the prayer of David, they refer to the kings of Tarshish bringing the offering. This translation is poor. It's really, this is the offering that Japheth's descendants bring. They return Israel to the land, okay, at the end of times, which we're heading into right now. So when we look at the word Chaldee, we see the Kaf, which is the K for the all giving. It's the hand, and it is the menorah, the light. So remember, we're looking at Ur, and we see this flame of fire, this light. It looks the same, okay? It's the Kaf, the giving hand, and the provider of light and flame and illumination and fire. And so the Hebrew pronunciation for this is Kasti. So Kaf, which is menorah, giving hand, light. Shin, door is in Dalet, that's a door to something. Door to the right hand, taking hold of waters and moving towards the waters of praise of life. So moving towards the waters of life, moving towards the Shemayim, the heavenly waters above the firmament. And so that's what Kastima means, okay? That's what Kastima means. And so that is coming out of the word Ur of the Chaldeans. So it's really Kastima or Chaldeans, okay? And so you see all of the translations and meanings of the words here. And so they say a Kassidites, Kassidima, and it mentions that they went into astrology and other things. So they were worshiping Teutonic things, astrology, cosmology, astrology, using the fallen angels to lead and guide in the form of planets. That's astrology. We don't do that in Israel. And I don't want anyone thinking as I'm talking about these stars and letters of the stars and angels over the stars that I am pro-astrology. I am not. The heavens are divided in 12 according to the 12 tribes of Israel, as is the earth. Okay, and that's in Deuteronomy. So don't confuse cosmology with astrology. That's not what I'm talking about or condoning. All right, so Ireland, Ur, so Urland. All right, Urland. Ur Kasdim, as we said before, Ur of the Chaldeans. So this is the land of the cauldron, the land of the people of fire. And so Ur means flame or fire, Ur. And so it's the Aleph secured with awe to the head, the Resh, the leader. So this is Shem, the firstborn son, out of whom the Savior comes, secured, the head son secured to the leader. The flame, who is Yahusha, is the flame of fire also, all right? And so Ur, a city in southern Babylonia, a city of Chaldeans, center of moon worship, Iraq, home of Abram's father Terah, the departure point for Abram to migrate to Mesopotamia, the land of Canaan. All right, now we're going to get into the stars. So once again, very clearly, I do not advocate astrology, the worship of planets to order your times, worship of sun, moon, and stars. I do not. All right, and I do not recommend anybody follow that. But Yahuwah calls the heavens and earth to witness. All of these things are a witness to him. All right, the heavens declare Yahuwah's handiwork and are a reflection of his glory. They declare his glory. It's what the scripture says. So we're looking for the glory of Yah, not some astrological readings from fallen angels who we're declaring as our leaders. We're not following the aliens. Okay, you guys, I'm joking around. Don't take me too seriously, but I just want to be clear. I'm not advocating astrology at all. All right, so we got to set a difference here. All right, so now we're going to go into Uriel, who is the leader of the great constellations, because I said over the land of the north, the northern kingdom was the Big Dipper, right? This constellation surrounds the North Star, and this is what gives us the 4 seasons: spring, summer, winter, fall. And so the book of Enoch and Ezra refer to this angel, Uriel. So the reason why I'm talking about him, he has the word Ur as a prefix in his name, Uriel. So he's the angel, he's the light of the angels. So this is interesting. He is an archangel. All right. So what does Enoch say about him? Well, he orders the courses of the luminaries in the heavens and the seasons, according to their classes, their dominion, their seasons, and their names and places of origin. So this is, the book of Enoch goes into this, and it says, which Uriel, the holy angel who was with me, who is their guide, showed me. So he guides all the luminaries, and his name is Uriel, okay? And Enoch 75 says, for the signs and times and years and the days, the angel Uriel showed me, whom Yahuwah of glory hath set forever over all the luminaries of heaven. So he is the leader of all of the stars and luminaries, and that includes the sun and the moon. Okay? Because what it says in the heaven and in the world, that they should rule on the face of the heaven and be seen on the earth and be leaders for the day and the night, the sun, moon, and stars, and all the ministering creatures which make their revolution in all the chariots of the heaven. So he's ruling over the sun, the moon, and the stars. And the angel Uriel that was sent unto me, whose name was Uriel, gave me an answer and said, your heart has gone too far in this world. Do you think to comprehend the way of Elohim? So Ezra goes on this big journey with Uriel about creation and the destruction of Israel, and does Yah have mercy for Israel? And he speaks as a messenger of Yah. Okay. And eventually what happens is he may be a type of Yahusha. And the reason why, a type of the Savior. Why do I say that? Do that historical, okay, reference, not true. This is from the Jewish Encyclopedia, okay? Is because like in medieval mysticism, he's also called the source of the heat of the day in winter, and the princely angel of the first day, the sun, so-called Sunday, right? But the scripture is very clear that the light of heaven is what ignites the sun and moon. There's a fire in heaven that ignites the sun and moon. It's the light of heaven. And that was the light that lit the first day. So to call Sunday the first day, not a god, but the first day, it would make sense if he is Yahusha and he is the first light, right? And he, as the word said, let there be light. And he appears in 2nd Ezra and he propounds 3 different problems to Ezra. And one of the first was, weigh me the weight of fire. So that is connected with his name, weighing fire, Ur. And this, the fire of Yahuwah, so it's not just an ordinary fire, or it's decoration from the light of Yahuwah, the glory of Yahuwah. So Yahuwah, Yahusha, is the light of the world. So sometimes, like in these other religions, this is not, Zoroastrianism is not Hebraic, okay? Well, it may be one of the Hebrews doing it, but it's not of Israel. It's my understanding, okay? But he is associated with fire. Okay, and what is seen on the mountaintop by Moses when he's visited by the burning bush, the fire, the flame, the lampstand, okay? And what goes between the sacrificial animals that seal the covenant between Yahuwah and Abraham? Who goes and seals the covenant of blood? You see a flame of fire going between the dead animals to seal that covenant, and that's Yahusha, called Uriel, okay? Uriel, the source of light. And one of the things that's said about Ur in Enoch, Uriel, is that he sees blood in the earth and he judges men with angels. So there is some power of judgment, but don't say that outright because we just don't know. And he's also the one who chained all the fallen angels in Tartarus, and Michael shuddered at it. So this is a very powerful being. This might be the angel of Yahuwah, because the angel of Yahuwah is the angel that's over Israel, not all these other so-called archangels. The angel of the Creator himself is Israel's angel. That's why it says that Israel is his portion. This is a conversation between the two of them, but he's speaking on behalf of Yah. He calls him the Most High. And oftentimes when certain angels come as a messenger, a lot of times the angel of Yahuwah is coming as a messenger, and that's Yahusha, because Yah is God in heaven, and then he comes in the form of an angel, and he also comes in the form of, the man Yahusha as salvation. And he stands on the mountain, even in Exodus 24 or 25, he literally stands before the 70 elders on the mountain for them to receive from him. So this is the form of Yahusha. Okay, this is when Yah comes in the form of a man or an angel. He comes as Yahusha, because his glory can't be contained in a single person's body, right? So he comes in the form of Yahusha, in the form of man who has been made in his image, right? Okay, so this is why he's maybe associated. And throughout this conversation, Uriel is talking to him, and it's almost as though he's interceding between him and Yah, because he's talking to Uriel the whole time, and this is how we know. When I had finished speaking these words, the angel who had been sent to me on the former nights was sent to me again, and he said to me, "Rise, Ezra, and listen to the words that I have come to speak to you." So now Ezra has this whole conversation with Yahuwah, and he's calling this angel my Lord. Now, Lord means Baal or Ishi or whatever. But one gets the sense this could be the angel of Yahuwah, who is Yahusha. And so here's the clue that we might get to him being a type of Yahusha, who is the light of the world. And this is why he guides all the stars, and he's brighter than the sun and moon, and he's a source of fire and light, or he guides that fire and light. So Ezra is pleading for the salvation of men, and Israel in particular, because he's like, there is no one who can, especially as sin increases in this world, who can be saved by their own righteousness. And so he says, what are mere mortals that you are angry with them? He's speaking to Yahuwah through the angel, right? Or the angel of Yahuwah. What is a corruptible race that you are so bitter against it? For in truth, there is no one among those who have been born who has not acted wickedly. Among those who have existed, there is no one who has not done wrong. For in this, O Yahuwah, your righteousness and goodness will be declared when you are merciful to those who have no store of good works. So when you love the unlovable, when you love those who are wicked, that's why in salvation, in Yahusha, you're asked to love the wicked. And he answered me and said, some things you have spoken rightly, and it will turn out according to your words. And he answered me and said, some things you have spoken rightly, and it will turn out according to your words. For indeed, I will not concern myself about the fashioning of those who have sinned, or about their death, their judgment, or their destruction. So he's speaking through Uriel, and he's answering like this, right? And then he says, but I will rejoice over the creation of the righteous, over their pilgrimage also in their salvation, and their receiving their reward, as I've spoken, therefore so it shall be. Over their salvation, and as I have spoken, therefore so it shall be. So he has the power to make it so, all right? So what he does is he decides in this conversation, or he reveals that he will give salvation to those who just trust and believe in him. And so the only one, he says, okay, I will not concern myself about the fashioning of those who have sinned. So who would be the one to concern themselves or be a judge of that? Only Yah, right? So that's why he's suspected to be a form of the angel of Yahuwah, all right? So back to, but I want to mention this because this is over the land in the north, all right? Uriel, this chief angel, right, who orders all of the stars and the sun and the moon, right? And he's the chief angel over the first day. That's why we don't start the calendar on the fourth day with the sun, the creation of the object called the sun. We started on the first day, all right? And so I showed you guys this image because this is older Hibernia, and also because it's like there's a cauldron-like sea in Chaldea. So origins of the Anglo-Saxon race describe some of the inhabitants, but also this cauldron. The isle is mountainous along the middle, where there are 4 hills of a considerable height. The 2 highest are well known to seafaring men by the name of the Paps of Jura. They are very conspicuous from all quarters of the sea and land in those parts. So it's mountainous in the Isles, well protected, easy to protect, right? So here's a description of something called the Tarshum at sea. Here's an isle about half a mile from Rome. It is miles from the south to the north and from the east to the west. And it is for the most part furrowed with a high rock, and the whole fruitful in corn and grass. The south and hath plenty of cod and lamb. There is a high hill in the north end which disorders the needle in the compass. I laid the compass on the stony ground near it, and the needle went often around with a great swift knells, and instead of settling towards the north as usual, it settled due east. And the stones in the surface of the earth are black, and the rock below facing the sea is red. Some affirm the needle of a ship's compass failing by the hill is disordered by the force of the magnet of this rock, but of this I have no certainty. The natives call this isle by the name of Tarshum at sea, Tarshum at sea. The rock Hester on the south end abounds with wild geese in August, and then they cast their. So that is a description of some of the people and the lands in the area of Britain. And now we're going to kind of go backwards and go to the Assyrian captivity. And they're saying Kalne may be taken to signify the house, the people who sacrifice to fire, according to Genesis. And it says, and may come of the Arabic to shine, denoting excellence, greatness, or beauty. Now, if you watch, please go back and watch my 4 carpenters video and the door to the promised land, and it goes into the Medo-Persians, and it talks about how this is the offering that will come, and how Cyrus was given the ability to seize this great light that Israel held, the Ur of the Chaldees. That was the gift that Yah gave him. Okay, so go back and watch the section on Iran and Cyrus the Great. Okay, who as a half Gentile, half Shemite is given this Christ-like priestly role, and that's the transition to the Gentiles ruling and taking on the identity of Israel. This is why he is called Koresh. See, he has the lamp in his name, and Koresh or Cyrus means possess thou the furnace. So he gets the fire. You see? So it says, thus saith Yahuwah to his anointed Cyrus, whose right hand, who is Yahusha, the right hand, I have held to open for him the double doors, so the gates will not be shut. So those are the gates to the temple, the doors to Israel, the gates of Gibraltar, all right? The gates that will not be shut, to give you treasures of darkness and hidden riches of secret places. I have named you, though you have not known me, over on the other side here. And then he says, so that for Jacob, my servant's sake, and Israel, my elect, that they, that is, the people may know from the rising of the sun to its setting, there is none beside me. I am Yahuwah, there is no other. I form light and create darkness. So this is all about treasures of darkness, hidden in secret places. So Israel becomes the hidden ones, and Cyrus becomes part of the redemption process, right? Tarshish. And he says, I have named you, though you have not known me. So he's saying to the Gentiles, you have not known me. But for the sake of Israel, that they may know me from the rising of the sun to its setting, because I form light and create darkness. So you see a whole relationship between light and darkness and redemption here that is tied to Ur and to so-called Cyrus, who is Koresh, who seizes the flame, and the flame is Israel. Is that he takes hold of this great light, okay, that is Ur. And then so the Arabic say it means to shine. And they talk about this land having some worship of the Akkadian god Dagon, which is a fish god, right? Which is an abominable false god, which is associated with the marine kingdom. But what they're talking about is that there's this word, akkad, that is associated, Akkad. They go over to page 32. The inhabitants of the wood named Midian is singularly enough drawn from the traditions preserved from the verses of the Okkads, or holy fields. So I guess this is, it says Akkad of Genesis is not the only one of the beginnings of Nimrod's kingdom. And so the Akkadians come out of that, Nimrod's kingdom. So Nimrod is in this land, and he takes it over. This is the beginning of his kingdom. Babel, Akkad, Kalnia, the land of Shinar. So, but the word Akkad actually comes from the Shema. Hear, O Israel, here on the right, Yahuwah, our Elohim, is one. And the word for one, Strong's H259, is Akkad. The one. All right. So this is the leader, I think, to the door. I can't remember what the second letter is. I can never tell them apart. You guys help me with the Yiddish fruit. But anyway, so after this, after Babel takes over, is when there's all these disasters that seem to have taken place in the West. And this is the judgment because they fell away, started worshiping the moon and doing druid stuff and astrology and all kinds of things. And so this is the warning. This is why I do not condone astrology. Sorry, guys, I feel like I'm the mom disciplining you guys, and I don't mean to come across that way, but I didn't have very powerful disciplinarian parents. So I like discipline. And so, these are the things that caused Israel to fall away was the worship of the sun, moon, and the stars. You're supposed to seek Yah first. Now, she says that the remains of old Hibernia Spain may be said to be present in the designation Celtberia, or Galada. So that would tie to Galatians or Gala. Gala means redeemer, is the Hebrew for redeemer, kinsman redeemer. Now, they talk about how Druids would have come from that land and how Lud, the brother of Arphaxad, would have been in that land, known in the British Islands. And they were known as the people of Lloyd or Loudon in Wales and Ireland, sons of Lud. The race of Lud extended over a considerable portion of Western Europe, and the old name of lions was Londonum. But you see, that would tie you to the old name for the city of London. And so as we go into the descriptions of the land and the people, etc., we just need to go through some basic terms as to what skin color in those regions, which were predominantly black and brown, were described as, because it was the norm. So it wasn't abnormal to be brown. And so, but of course there's variation, as there always is among Black people. There's these kind of 5 shades. And so let's get into some of the terminology and get it accurate. So one of the terms that you're going to see is, and maybe not just in this video, but others, is the term brunette. Now, we commonly hear brunette as meaning somebody with brown hair, chocolate brown hair. And of course, the term actually refers to skin color, a girl with a brown or dark complexion. And I'm using this ancient etymological book of language, but it also corresponds with this etymology dictionary that's online as well. And so it also says a woman of dark complexion having a brownish tone to skin and hair, 1660s, from French brunette, from old brunette, brownish, brown hair, dark complexion, female, diminutive of brown, of West Germanic origin, from Proto-Germanic brunaise, or bear, bright brown. That's like Berber, okay? Like very, very spice. I happen to be eating some very, very spice today. That red brown stew the Ethiopians make. Anyway, so it's as a noun, a woman with dark hair, dark eyes, and of a dark complexion. All right, Brunette, the old French Brunette, is the source of the surname Brunette. And it was also used of a wool-dyed cloth of superior quality, originally dark brown. Okay, so when we see brunette, rather than thinking about hair products that poison your scalp, we should be thinking about skin color, right? Sorry guys, be a little too serious, but trying to make it interesting. Okay, so then here's another term, dusky. Dusky here is dark or obscure, dark colored, sad and gloomy sometimes. But it's also tied to duskishly and duskiness. And and that can mean dark or black. So dark colored, dark or black. And then the online dictionary says somewhat dark, not luminous, the normal source of an adjective, but the substitute use of dusk is not known so early as the appearance of dusky. So the latter would appear to be one of the rare instances of the secondary, meaning rather black and dark colored. Okay. Next, and we'll look at some pictures too. Schwartz, and of course we know the Stuart family. In the Scottish Stuart family were known as the Stuart or Schwartz family, or they were swarthy. They were brown. And this is the Old English word for black. Swart, according to the online etymological dictionary. It is often doubtful whether black or black means black or dark or pale or colorless, when livid, used of a dark-skinned people in Old English. So the skin is dark, not just the hair. Darkly colored, especially of skin. Okay, swarthiness. Black, dark, of night clouds, also figurative, wicked, infamous. So these are now negative descriptions. This is when they started associating dirtiness and corruption with black. The source of sordid, all right? The true dramatic words surviving in the continental languages, but displacing English by black, of skin color of persons of the late 14th century. Swartist. So swart, Stuart, swarthy, Schwartz, all tied to dark colored or black skin. Now here's another term. We already went over the swarthy, duplicate there, ruddy. Ruddy, meaning reddish, of a red color, rosy, healthy red, probably from redness, which is related to rude. Red, ready, as a British slang euphemism for bloody, as recorded by 1914. Now, there's a term they have in Jamaica, ruddiness, and they would call you a rude boy. You're a red boy in Jamaica. A message to you. A message to you. When we see Black people who have reddish hair, this is a little brown girl with red hair. Also, Lord Darnley was known to be sort of ruddy brown, red hair, so was King Dawid. And there's a quote in Lamentations, and this is just another translation, Septuagint is different, but it says in Jeremiah, the prophet, in the book of Jeremiah, he talks about the skin color of Hebrews starving to death and suffering, changing from ruddy to blacker than coal, which happens with some darker skinned people. As they get sicker, they get blacker, okay? It says her Nazarites were purer than snow. They were whiter than milk. They were more ruddy in body than rubies. Their polishing was of sapphire. Their visage is blacker than a coal. They are not known in the streets. Their skin cleaveth to their bones. It is withered. It is become like a stick. And so this is a, you know, I don't always use this example, but it is very interesting because they use the ruddy. And it says they were purer than snow, whiter than milk. And this language is confusing because it makes you think they're talking about skin color, right? But they're talking about the purity of these people. Now it says ruddy in body and their face black. So this is the prefix. The first part of the sentence is talking about quality of character in person. And then they move on to physical body and face. Okay, so Rudy. And it's a song singing to Rudy, stop your messing around, Reds. You better think of your future. And so this is from blackhistoryinthebible.com, which we all love. And it says ruddy skin color in scripture. It doesn't mean what you think it means. And my mother had this red tone to her skin. And I used to say she was the color of red bricks, red brick color. And you see it right behind them. You see the brick. I used to say she has that brick colored red skin. And so this is ruddy skin. And when you look up ruddy, these are the colors. This is the spectrum of red that you get. In dogs, in cows, the red bull. In horses, the sorrel, the red horse, the ruddy horse. So you see, this is the true color. And when my sister went to university in the States, they would call her, and they called Malcolm X, Redbone. And Enoch, when it mentions the birth of Noah, it says his body was as white as snow and as red as a rose, and the hair of his head as white as wool, and his dadima beautiful, in other words, his face, demdima. As for his eyes, when they opened, the whole house glowed like the sun, the whole house glowed even more exceedingly. And when he arose from the hands of the midwife, he opened his mouth and spoke to Yahuwah with righteousness. And his father Lamech was afraid and fled and went to Methuselah. I have begotten a strange son, and he's not like an ordinary human being, but he looks like the children of the angels. These are stones that are often used. I think these are jason or jasper, jason. And you see they have the white and the red. Okay, so we're getting close to the idea of what the ruddy skin tone is like. Now, when we get into Revelation, it talks about the one who sat there on the throne had the appearance of jasper and ruby. Here we go again. Rudy, ruby, ruddy, a rainbow that shone like an emerald encircled the throne. So we see the contrast between the red, right, and the green rainbow. It was the last of the 12 stones representing the 12 tribes of Israel, which were mounted in the breastplate of the high priest. This is the jasper or Yassif, okay, Jasper Stone. And so this is the color it is. It can be this red chocolate color. It can be this bright red. It can be spotty. So dark chocolate to brown to red to amber to white speckled, okay? And Jeremiah says, mine heritage is unto me a speckled bird. The birds round about are gathered against her. Come ye, assemble all the beasts of the field, come to devour. So this is when Israel was cut off. And they became a speckled bird. They became a bird that was corrupting their seed and doing all kinds of things. So I just wanted to show you that so you can understand what ruddy means. More that's said about the people. So now we're going to get into how they look, okay? And some of the names. So here's the page. Now I'm just showing you an image of the Black Celts, okay? This is not Black Celts book. We're still in the same. We're now in this book called Ancient and Modern Britons, okay? What may be called genealogical evidence of the existence of black skin races in Scotland within historic times has already been adduced in considering the Moors. Now remember, I just said Micah of the Northern Kingdom was from Moorish Gath. He was Morashti. Okay, so this is the 10 tribes were very much associated with the term Moor, and Mauritania was their land. I showed you in earlier videos on Prester John. And it's difficult to decide whether the examples given ought to be styled Picts or Danes. Now, Danes would have its root in Dan or Danube, Black Dan. Nubian means black. So the Loed, as in MacLeod, would be descended from the Danes. Leo is of lion. Olaf is Aleph. So Leod. All right, so lion and Olaf or olive tree. El, angel. So from the Leod, a son to the Black Prince of Man. So Leod, doesn't Paul mention the church in Laodicea, lion, Dosia? So in other words, the ancestor of the MacLeod, there may be specified an ancestor of the MacLeods of MacLeod, that family being held to be descended from Leod, a son of Black Prince of Man. So that's what he was known to be, the Black Prince of Man. Which islands was for a long time under the rule of the Danes. The father of this Leod, so the land of the lions, the lands where the lions are, and they have lions in Britain, was in all probability Olav, so olive skin, black olive skin, Sparti, black, or olive and swarthy, mentioned in the Phaeton manuscript, who was the king of Man during the 13th century. A certain branch of the Campbells also has a similar lineage. So I have relatives who are of the Campbells as well, by marriage. All right, so this is a description of the western lands of Scotland and the appearance of the people, okay? Now, keep in mind, a lot of these letters are off because it's hard to copy paste this English. And remember that F's are always S's. That's why I say Aphia instead of Asia. The inhabitants of this isle are generally well proportioned and their complexion is for the most part black. Okay, so they are black. They are not obliged to art in forming their body, for nature never fails to act on her part bountifully toward them. And perhaps there is no part of the habitable globe where so few bodily imperfections are to be seen, nor any children that go more early. I have observed several of them walk alone before they were 10 months old. So you see that with black kids? They are bathed all over every morning and every evening. From in the cold, from in the warm water, but the latter is most commonly used. And they wear nothing straight about them. In other words, they're wearing wafts of fabric, okay? And when they are anyway fatigued by travel or otherwise, they fail not to bathe their feet in warm water, wherein red moss has been boiled, and rub them with it going to bed. The ancient custom of rubbing the body by a warm hand opposite the fire is now laid aside, except from the lower part of the thigh downwards to the ankle. This they rub before and behind in the cold weather at going to bed. So this is their living habits. So these, I believe, are the northern tribes, right? And now here's a description of the appearance of the brunette, okay? A new phase of the matter was presented at Broca's celebrated research concerning the physical characteristics of the French people in the decade following 1860, especially those among peasants in Brittany. Here were the only Celtic-speaking people on the continent, and they were of short race. And they come up with the 1865 Crania Britannica with the added proof that a large part of the Celtic-speaking population of the British Isles, particularly the Welsh, were equally short and of dark complexion. So remember, brunette means brown skin.
Brunette and short.
July 1327. Even if that great district forms the borderline between Yorkshire and Lancaster, stories are still current of the reception which the inhabitants of Yorkshire always sometimes met with when they crossed the moorlands to the Rosendale, Lancashire. The traditional reception of such a stranger was to call him a foreigner and heave a sod at him. So they set a difference between them, the strangers, and called them a foreigner, and they would heave something at them. And that's such a word you hear among the Jamaicans. They'll say, just heave it, just pick it up and heave it at him, right? There was, he says, a theory that the inhabitants were descended from the ancient Britons. Now it says, whom the Jute settlers had failed to drive out of their morasses. The Jutes were Edomites. The Jutes were Edomites. They weren't real Israelites or Jews. Now, bearing in mind these circumstances, we cannot wonder if it should appear that the original Anglo-Saxon settlers, not original to the land, but the settlers, in some instances called their neighbors in the next settlement, if they were of a different tribe, by the tribal name to which they belonged, or one expressive of the sense of strangers or foreigners. Such a meaning is apparently conveyed by the use of the Anglo-Saxon prefix al, other, strange, or foreign. So Jutes, Wends, Nors, these were all foreigners. Nordics, Jutes, Wends, Edomites. So now this is saying that regarding these people who came in, the Saxons, the Angles, the Danes, the Jewess, we must allow that the earliest individuals who were called by a tribal name derived it in some way or other from tribe, as those first called Scot did from the early Scots. So what they're saying is that they took their names from the original indigenous people. So that's the transition, Dan to Esau, Edom, and then to the Nords. Okay, and I'm suspecting, and I'm only guessing from reading this book of the Anglos.
So they took their names from that of the tribe whose land they took over. This keeps skipping, guys, so my apologies. I have to just play this. So they were called Brown, Brunette, it skipped there, and they would take the name, the original people were Brown, Brunette, and then the interlopers who came in would steal the identity and call themselves by the name of the tribal land that they took over. So if they were taking it over from Dan, they'd call themselves Danes.
Anglo-Saxon race, that the Edomites began to call themselves Jewess. Now, it could be possible that these are Yahudi who went into that land after their scattering, after much of the northern kingdom left. And even Jacob went back into that land because that was his land. We don't know. But there is a belief that Jewess is connected to the Saxon kings. So the Saxons, I believe, are Isaac's sons, or they're related to the Saxons of the Gentile combination thereof. All right, occurrence of the name Jewess in the genealogy of the West Saxon kings. Jewess would naturally rise at the time when the Anglo-Saxon genealogies were drawn up from the tribal name Jewess, Jewess being in common use. Now, remember, everyone started calling themselves a Jew at the time of the Medo-Persian captivity, right, to protect themselves. All right, this is the name of the mythological ancestor of the royal house, is certainly more likely to have been derived from the name of the tribe than that tribal name should, right? So they're saying this is derived from the name of the tribe. But one thing it does say about the looks of these people, the counties of Hertford and Buckingham have people as dark as Wales. And investigation goes to show that this brunette outcrop is a reality. It says Bedfo found that the area in which there is a larger percentage of brown people in England extends from the River Lea to Warwickshire, Avon, or Awan. Okay, so this is referring to the color of people. All right, so let's go a little bit. Now this is Lord Darnley that I showed you before with the reddish hair. And so this describes sons of the black. Of those veritable Mandicufs, the sons of the black, we see a specimen, so the reign of Queen Mary. Okay? Queen Mary is mother of King James. There were two Queen Marys, but I believe this is who they're referring to. In the person of a black Mr. John Spence, was a principal deviser of the murder of Darnley, whose family, so that's Lord Darnley, he's kind of a red bone, right? He's kind of dusky looking, right? He's kind of red looking, whose family point to the lion rampant in their arms as providing their descent from the semi-royal MacDu, like the Black Douglases and other Scoto-Pictish Scottish nation. Okay, the sons black, those Mandicufs, hired to retain the political power of their ancestors, gradually identified themselves with the winning races. So the sons of the black, the descendants of the lion. So this now, these are the Jewesses. This is a different set of people. These are the Schwartzes, the Stuarts. And they're saying that they're related to the lion, okay? And this is why Britain always had the symbol of the lion. It's another land where the lion was, okay? The sons of the black, those who desired to retain the political power of their ancestors, gradually identified themselves with the winning races, the Normans and others, until, as in similar cases, the nominal heads of such families are, at the darkest, Melon Croy, often Xantho Croy. Their claim to Pictish blood no stronger than that of certain Virginian families to the blood of Pocahontas, whose descendants they certainly are. So basically, they got washed out because they started to lean towards the Normans of Normandy, the North, the new normal, the Nordic man. So they started to blend in racially with them. But Lord Darnley, the father of King James, called himself a descendant of the lion, and McDu. So if you can watch my other videos from Negro to Blanco, you'll see in the Moorish conquests, you'll see McDu as a very black man. Okay? And I believe that's part of the Jewish scattering, the scattering of the Yahudi. So, and I believe these are potentially, King James was a mix of Yahudi and Joseph. Okay, Calico and Yehudi. Remember, because Joseph, that is Ephraim and Manasseh, returned to the northern kingdom, they all called themselves Yehudi at that time because they considered the northern kingdom to be wiped out or taken over. So it's possible that they could have been, because there's the whole Calico thing. So I'm not entirely sure. Theory. This is what you can only deal with history. All right, so here's a description of modern Britain. Okay, her hair was black as night and her clear eyes glittered through the peat smoke. Her complexion was dark and her features so unlike those who sat about her. I asked if she were a native of the island and learned that she was a Highland girl. Her face generally reminded the observer of the Nineveh sculptures. So Nineveh is the land of who? Shem. The faces of Saint Sebastian. In all these cases, we can find every reason for understanding why the tales of the West Highlands should abound. Going on, Hebrides, as elsewhere, certain races were absolute savages, there can be no doubt. But on the other hand, some of the writers quoted, such as the one who describes the Harris mulattoes, ascribed the dark-hued natives the possession of intellectual and moral attributes of the highest kind, attributes which rendered the Harrison mulattoes, meaning Northern and West African, the superiors of the whites. Danes were called strangers, black heathen. And this is likely because they were mixing in with the Huns and their genetic lines were getting really crazy. Then it says those Quethach or gypsies of the Hebrides then were actual black savages. Although, like all savages, they possess civilization and a politety of their own. They bear different race names. The historians have told us much about them and their fierce nature, how they plundered and ravaged the early homes of learning and religion in Ireland, in the Isles, and throughout the larger of the main British islands. Chiefly, they are remembered as Danes or black heathen. That's what it says about Queen Elizabeth at the time, according to this book, Elizabeth the Queen. And this is actually an old reference. I've seen it in other videos, but I haven't been able to find the book yet. But anyway, so this Alison Weir refers to an older reference, and it says here, she was tall and slender with a tiny waist, small bosom, beautiful long-fingered hands, typical of Black women, right? Which it pleased her vanity to display to advantage in a variety of affected poses. She had a swarthy complexion. She had a swarthy complexion. She had a swarthy complexion like that of her mother. So that would be Anne Boleyn would be swarthy. Although she made a habit of whitening it with lotion made up of egg whites, powdered eggshell, and poppy seeds, borax, and alum, which made her face appear white and luminous. She had inherited also Anne Boleyn's long, thin face, high cheekbones, and pointed chin. From her father, she had her hair red, naturally curly hair, and high hooked nose. Okay, so she was swarthy, and she had red hair like the Red Bull. So when you hear names like Eric the Red among the Vikings, the original Vikings were Celts, they were black. The woman here on the left is swarthy and red colored. However, that red hair color is a hair dye. And there's a lot of sisters who bleach their hair to turn it into this hair color, but you do see people in the South Pacific Islands with that particular hair color because it is a mix of blonde and black hair that creates red hair. And so you see black people who are dark skinned in the South Pacific, like I showed in the Rudy video, who will have the blondish hair. But generally, when you see most sisters walking around with this, who are dark skinned or even ruddy with this red colored hair, it's usually a hair dye, which most men would not know about or be aware of. I want to turn here to look again at invasion patterns, as Dan coming in usually to do the first invasion, then Esau following, and then the Gentiles and the Huns and so on. In the year 810, St. David's was burnt by the West Saxons. In 1911, there came a great navy from Tidwick and Uther and Rehald, and passed by the western sea to Wales and destroyed St. David's. So in 981, a great army landed in West Wales and spoiled the land of Dyfed, okay, with the Church of St. David's, and he fought the Battle of Llanwog. The Danes landed in South Wales and destroyed St. David's land barn, I don't know how to pronounce these words, and did so much hurt in the country besides that to be rid of them, Meredith was fain to agree with them and to give them a penny for every man within his land, which was called the tribute of the Black Army. But Minerva was all spoiled and destroyed by strangers. So there is Dan invading. Now, a lot of times they say the Dans are the Danes and the Vikings, but I get the sense that this is Dan. So only Simeon, Manasseh, and Ephraim returned with Judah, Levi, and Benjamin to rebuild the second temple. So what this means is that the land of Dan, Germany, all of that stuff, Britain, Spain, is all under contention post-Syrian captivity. And so Dan is on the run. He's taken captive to Africa. He's taken captive to Khazaria. And so he's trying to get some land. Scripture says, Dan shall be a serpent by the way, an adder in the path that biteth the horse's heels, so that his rider shall fall backwards. So it looks like what Dan does, he's from Danube. So he's from the Danube River from Germany, and now he's in Britain trying to invade. So he seems to clear the way for Esau to come in, and he wars against his own brothers. And so here's an account that says, in the year 810, St. David's was burnt by the West Saxons. In 1911, there came a great navy from Tidwick and Uther and Rehald, and passed by the western sea to Wales and destroyed St. David's. So in 981, a great army landed in West Wales and spoiled the land of Dyfed, okay, with the Church of St. David's, and he fought the Battle of Llanwog. The Danes landed in South Wales and destroyed St. David's land barn, I don't know how to pronounce these words, and did so much hurt in the country besides that to be rid of them, Meredith was fain to agree with them and to give them a penny for every man within his land, which was called the tribute of the Black Army. So there is Dan invading. Now, a lot of times they say the Dans are the Danes and the Vikings, but I get the sense that this is Dan, the serpent in the way. Okay, here's something regarding this transition that took place. So this is about 850 AD. So Teutonic invasion at the hands of the Danes. So remember in some of my earlier videos, you should really look into them from Blanco to Negro or Negro to Blanco. It goes into the Teutonic Knights, who were Danes or possibly Edomites. Okay, and they were up against the sides of the north, up against the land of Japheth, in basically Germany, the border with the land of Japheth. So they got very mixed in during the captivities with all the Vikings and the people of the north and the Huns and all that kind of stuff. And when Esau took them away into captivity, right? Because Assyria is very close to that land. So like I said, this process was that the Danes would then invade, and then Esau would come in on his heels and take over what they took, because they were the snake that causes the rider to fall back, and the eagle like Esau. So that's what they have in common. Origin of the Anglo-Saxon race. It says that Danes were in search of booty along farther north, especially in Lincolnshire, its vicinity. The character of the names betokens intentional colonization, and a very intensive one at that. Thus, nearly a quarter of the village in Lincolnshire terminate in by, as in Whitby, Derby, and the like. The Saxon equivalent for this Danish word for village is ham, or ton, so Buckingham, hunting ton. The line of demarcation of Danish settlement on the south is very sharp. So if it's Dan by Bayet, would imply Bayet house, so Whitby, Derby, and the like. So Ham is related to pig or boar or Babylon. Again, Esau, Edom inherited Babylon. One of his sons was Beor, one of the kings of Edom who reigned. The inhabitants are all Protestants and speak Irish tongue generally, there being but a few that speak English, and they are grave and reserved in their conversation. They are accustomed not to bury on the Friday, because the Friday is the day of rest. They are fair or brown in complexion, and use the same habit, diet, etc., that is made use of in the adjacent continent of the Isles. There is only one inn in this isle. The Isle of Jura is by a narrow channel of about half a mile broad, separated from the IU, not sure what that is. The natives say that Jura is so called from Dean and Ra, two brethren who are believed to have been Danes. The names Deb and Ra signifying as much as without grace or propriety. Now later on in the book, Races of Europe, the Norwegians coming next mainly confined their attention to the northern and western coasts of Scotland. Shunning their vigorous competitors to the south, they attacked the island from the backside. Why? Because they're coming from the land of the north. They're Nords, Norwegians. They're not indigenous people. On the islands, the Shetlands, Orkneys, and Hebrides, the case was much the same. Here are the Aborigines, so that's a term for indigenous people of land, were often entirely replaced by a purely Scandinavian population. Such a family with strongly accentuated Norwegian peculiarities is depicted on this page. You see them? It's contrast with the Aboriginal dark population. The old black breed needs no comment. So now this is really funny, what they're going to call the old, this is like, I'm sure, replaced in the book. They're calling this is the book, the old black breed. Look at, this guy looks like Abraham Lincoln. This guy at the bottom looks totally Nordic. Totally Nordic. The last two look Nordic. They look Gentile. The old black breed. Now, the old black breed would be the true Hebrews with stronger brows, not Cro-Magnon, but with a strong jaw, strong brow, so nice arched eyebrows, thick eyebrows, not a heavy forehead, which they're showing here, this heavy Cro-Magnon forehead. So I don't think this is the old black breed. because these people are all white. Their skin's white. It's not brown. And so this is a contrast between the Edomites versus the indigenous people of the land. And they're trying to pretend that the original people were these Cro-Magnon looking Caucasian Nords. Okay, so what they say is of the previous, probably Israelites or Shemites, the head is broad and short, the face strongly developed, and the cheekbones frowning or beetle-browed. The development of the brow ridges being especially noticeable in contrast with the smooth, almost feminine softness of the Saxon forehead. So here's the Saxons. This is Philip of Spain. This is Ivan of the Byzantine Empire. And then this is Isabella of Spain and Maria of Aragon. Okay, so they all have this smooth, feminine kind of forehead. They're calling these guys the old black breed. Well, those are not the original people. That would be, these are Nords. So this is the Assyrian captivity was in 727, 745 to 727 BC. And he is the one who took captive. And now what I'm showing you here is that they were in a state of sin in that region. And so usually the judgment manifests in earthquakes, tornadoes, all kinds of stuff. So what I want to say is that from the time of that captivity, disasters and convulsions destroy the British Isles and separate them from the mainland. And I believe because of the date of these events, that this has a connection. So Ur of the Chaldees, right? Earthquakes destroy over 56 round towers in Ulster, all the way to the British Isles. They are separated, the British Isles, from the continent. They were not separate before. And it occurs around 787 BC, which is just before the Assyrian captivity. So there's a judgment, and there's an eruption of lakes given by ancient annalists in the area of Ireland. The Bible reminds us of several earthquakes. One of the most remarkable is that which in the 27th year of Isaiah, king of Yahudah, BC 787. So that's around that time. Zechariah and Amos speak of it, and it's recorded in the annals of Ulster that an earthquake at one time overthrew over 56 of the round towers. So they had round towers there in Britain, and drove asunder the nations, says Habakkuk. And so there is an allusion, could this not be illusions? This is what she asks, which is interesting here, to the British Islands cut from the continent of Europe. And so they say that there's all these burned and charred roots. Thy bow was made quite naked, according to the oaths of the tribes, even thy word. Thou didst cleave the earth with rivers. So remember, suddenly the Mediterranean appears. Britain could have broken off from the continent. Africa breaks away. We don't know if that happened. The time of Peleg was the beginning of the dividing, and it probably got worse and worse depending on the sin of mankind. And so it says, geologists speak of disturbed formations, for they find primitive rocks uppermost, and the great mystery of the formation of the Irish bog has never yet been solved. Vast deposit, miles in extent of dark vegetable and animal matter containing forests. So they talk about how the bog smell of oak and other trees with burnt charred roots, many in horizontal position, would seem to tell of the fire of Yahuwah and remind us of burning coals that went forth at his feet. Strange bones of men's and animals and oak canoes, jewels, being strange characters, gold and silver ornaments in great quantity are found in these deposits, and assure us of a great earthquake having occurred there. So those are in the bogs of Ireland. And then after that, was thine angry against the rivers? Why was there wrath against the sea? So this, I believe, is how the tribes were driven out of their land at that time, in addition to war. So you would call it maybe disaster capitalism, is what Esau and the Assyrians took advantage of, was their misfortune and the sin and the punishment that Yah was bringing against them. That primarily is what drove them out. Well, here's more on what the islands looked like. And this is also referring to that cauldron. So we're just going to close with two more proofs, extensive proofs of the people of Yasharel being in Africa and of Africa. And we're going to start with 12 tribes found in Igbo land. Amazing. Here's some great evidence in this video, 12 tribes found in Igbo land, about the Igbo being the true Hebrews in Africa, true Israelites, Bantus people. And so I encourage you to take a look at it. Now, I don't believe everything that they say in it, but I think it provides some very useful information that I'll share here. But like I say, I won't share the entire video. And there are book references too that you can pick up.
So today, brothers and sisters, I'm going to explain the 12 tribes in Igbo land today. I'm going to show you where the 12 tribes ended up in Igbo land, the 12 of them. So that people who say that Igbos are just God or Igbos are just Judah or Igbos, you will see that that's not correct. The 12 tribes, they are here in Igbo land. From the very first video I did, I explained that that's the way it is. They're all here in Igbo land. Okay, children of God, what are we looking at? We are looking at the map of Nigeria. This map shows the different tribes in Nigeria. Again, this is not all the tribes. There are over 250 tribes in Nigeria. As you can see, the Igbo tribe is just about here. This is where we are. This is our own nook in the planet. This is the same map of Igbo communities all over. In this video today, I will explain where the 12 tribes have fallen into. Now, if you read the book by Dr. Elizabeth Isichi, titled The Igbo People and the Europeans, this particular book right here, in that book, she mentioned that the pattern of migration and settlement in Igbo land is in an anti-clockwise manner. Now, I was doing this research myself independently, even before I read that book. I came to that conclusion, an anti-clockwise pattern of migration was from the river Niger. And people who settled, the first settlers settled here, the next one was settled, the next ones came and they settled in this anti-clockwise manner. Just like this. That's how they settled in Igbo land. We know that the Northern Kingdom were the first to leave the Middle East and come to Africa. In Igbo land, in this area where you see the first settlers in Igbo land, that's where you see people from the Northern Kingdom. And in this, when you see the later settlers in Igbo land, that's where you see people from the Southern Kingdom. The Southern Kingdom is made up of the tribes of Judah, Benjamin, and some Simeon. And you are going to see them here in the census.
So what you're going to find here is that there are various different tribes speaking different languages or having slightly different customs amongst this spiral of settlement in Igbo land. And here's the explanation for it.
And languages and dialects differ. This tells you that you are dealing with different tribes in Igbo land. That's how the difference is in Igbo land. And any Igbo person will understand it. That shows that we originally come from different tribes. Let's talk about the 12 tribes.
According to Genesis 46:16, the son of God is called Eri.
Now, in Anambra State, in this area, we have a community that's called Aguleri. Aguleri means namesake of Eri. We also have another community that's called Oreri. We have another community, Oreri community here. And we have the Uri community. These are all descendants of Eri. In Aleri, that's the last son of God. In Anambra State, we have a community that is called Umuleri. Umuleri means Umu Aleri, children of Aleri. Right here in Anambra State, as the first settlers in Igbo land, these are all children of God. Okay, that's for the tribe of God, the tribe of Levi. The tribe of Levi, brothers and sisters, in the Bible, the tribe of Levi had no settlement of their own. They settled with the rest of other tribes in their different communities. That is what the Bible stated clearly. Okay, what that means is that every community have a Levitical tribe in them. The children of Levi were the writers, they were the people that kept the manuscripts, the documents, and everything of the Hebrews in those days. And they were called the Ephraimites. Okay, they were called Ephraimites, children of Levi, who the custodians of the documents of the tabernacle, of the scriptures in those days, were called Ephraimites. You can see this in the Strong's Concordance and in every scriptural documentation. It's actually not in the Bible. You can see them in the tribe of Gad, the tribe of Dan, the tribe of Asher, the tribe of Judah. All over, they settled in different places with the different tribes in their own localities. Go back to the map of Igbo land. There are in every Igbo communities, we have a particular village that's called If. Almost every Igbo community have an Ifite. There's an Ifite here in Oka called, there's Ifite in Nanka, there's Ifite in Imo State, Oguari. All over Igbo land, every community have an Ifite. This is what the children of Levi, every community have their own Ifite.
The word Ivrit was used to denote the entire Hebrews at one point, but was later used for the Levitical priests who were the custodians of Hebrew worship. Scholars of modern Hebrew believe the root of the word is a Canaanitic word, aver, which means to cross over. That is why some people believe that the Hebrew means to cross over.
In those days, and even till today, the people of Ifite are known to have the spiritual powers that the children of Levi possess in the Bible. The people of Ifite are the healers, they are the shamans, the healers, the magicians, or whatever you call them, the doctors of those days. If you are sick,
one of the sons of Levi is Issachar.
And sisters, if you come to Ebonyi State, over here, there is a community that is called Iza in Ebonyi State. It's present in Igbo land today. Now, brothers and sisters, let's go to the tribe of Joseph. This is actually very important because it is just the way it is in the Bible. You see it in Igbo land today, the tribe of Joseph. The tribe of Joseph is made up of two tribes. The two sons of Joseph, the tribe of Ephraim and Manasseh. These are brothers.
Allotment for the descendants of Joseph extended from the Jordan to Jericho, to the waters of Jericho on the east, through the wilderness that goes up from Jericho into the hill country of Bethel. It went on from Bethel, that is Luz, and proceeded to the border of the Archites in Ar-Taroth. Then it descended westward to the border of the Japhletites as far as the border of Beth Horon and on to Gezer, and it ended at the sea. So you see, Ephraim's land is right beside the Japhethites, so right beside Japheth, in the land of Luz and near Beth Horon, near Gezer, Gazer, the Gaza Strip where the pyramids are. Gezer, Gaza. All right, so according to Joshua 16:2, there was a land called Ache that was part of Ephraim's inheritance, and it was near a place called Atzeroth. And there actually is a place called Atzeroth or Ataroth right in northern Africa that people mistake for Azarath.
In the book of Joshua, chapter 16, verse 2, you will know that one of the communities that the children of Joseph settled in is called Achi. Okay? Today, if you come to Igbo land, we have communities that is known as, we have communities that are also known as brothers of Achi. That's how you know the children of Jacob have brothers. The brothers are as Ephraim and Manasseh. The brotherhood is retained in the name. In the states, there is a community that is known as Achi. If you come to Anambra State, there is a community that is known as Umunachi. The brothers of Achi, the children of Jacob, bear the name of their communities, mostly in the northern part, Anambra and Enugu State. Okay. Now, the next tribe we will talk about is the tribe of These are used to denote elders. The tribe of Zebulun, brothers and sisters, is what they call the Ozubulu in Anambra State. That is basically the tribe of Zebulun are the Ubulu tribes. We have also Ubulu. These are all children of Zebulun scattered in Igbo land today. Here, one of the tribe of Judah is called Abia. It's a very important word in Igbo land. It's actually a word that used to rile up people. If you listen to a lot of Igbo songs, you'll be hearing the word Abia. In Igbo land, there is a state, a complete state, that's called Abia State, the entire state. This is what you call Abia State. There you will see a concentration of the tribes of Judah. People from Abia State are mostly from the tribe of Judah and Benjamin. Let me prove it to you. In the book of 1 3, verse 10, again, the son of Abia is called Asa. Still in Abia State, brothers and sisters, there are communities that are called Asa. We have an Asa village in Abia State. We have another village that's called Asa Umuteke, all in Abia State. These are children of Judah. Professor Lazy is, I think, from Abia State, so he mentioned these communities clearly. So many other communities that I don't know, there are a lot of communities that have biblical names in Abia State, all children of Judah. Now, the tribe of Benjamin, brothers and sisters, let's go to the tribe of Benjamin. The tribe of Benjamin is today, you will see the tribe of Benjamin living together with the children of Judah in Abia State. Brothers and sisters, the capital of Abia State is called Umuahia. Umuahia means children of Ahia. In the Bible, 1 Chronicles 8, verse 7, as a child of Benjamin. 1 verse 1. If you go there, you see another child of Benjamin that's called Afia. Afia is his name. In Abia State, we have another community that's called Ohafia. Ohafia means people of Afia. If you read that book of Samuel, 1 Samuel 9, verse 1, Afia is known as a great warrior. People of Ohafia are known for their talent.
Well, you can go and look at this video for yourself. It goes into more detail, and also I showed the books that you can look up as well to do more research on the subject. This is just a video that really revealed a lot to me in my growth journey, so I thought I would share it with you. So lastly, we're going to deal with the genetics of Israel, and this is rather simple. So when we look for the genetics, we find on factsandDetails.com, talks all about Abraham and his covenant with Yah, and this is how they represent Abraham, okay? And him visited by 3 angels. Makes a covenant with Yah. Now you can always recognize the false gods because they've always got these nude children and babies. This is Babylonianism because you've always got the pedophilia, right? Because they're living off of the blood of children, these false gods and fallen angels, right? Because cherubim and seraphim are like multiple winged creatures and snake angels. So here's the genealogy here of Esau and Jacob, right? And then we finally get to the genetics here. And of course, the only place we find these genetics, so here's the E1B1A, and that is all sub-Saharan Africa. B1B, this is Edomite. And so as I've said, these are Fulanis, mixed in with some of the Hausa, and so on and so forth up here. The Yemeni. These colors don't correspond to any of these colors up here, because this is all E1B1A. So this is the male. So this, of course, as we said before, is the land of Shem and the land of Abraham, okay? And so what it's saying is the E1B1A, which is where Israel was scattered to sub-Saharan Africa. beyond sub-Saharan Africa down into southern Africa. These are largely the Bantus people. And you have E1B1B above. And so these are the male lines. And then they're saying you have all these. So these are the other lines that have scattered into the lands and interloped into the lands of Israel up here. But this is still the land of Israel. And it is the land of the lion. This lion doesn't exist anywhere else on the planet but here. So that's how you know it's the land. You can say everything you want about North America, but there's no lions there, and a mountain lion doesn't count. So when we look at the genetics of the Israelites, we see first that it's haplogroup group E that Abram comes from. And then we have Isaac at E1B. And then there's all these E1As who are descendants of Abram. Okay. And then we have Jacob coming from Rebecca and Isaac. And then we have Esau as well. So he's B1B. Jacob is A because he's the first. He is the former of all things. And so this is where all these genetic lines split off into. Okay, so thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. Like, subscribe, and share. I encourage you to make a donation at livelifewell.com into alltruth.net. And in order to obtain a calendar, the Moed appointed times, and Chai, Eat, Life, and Fast, they enable us to live our lives Hebraically, to line up with the appointments or meetings with our Creator, who pours a message and a word into us and guides us into all truth. And it's by using these types of tools that we can remain faithful to our Elohim's word and enter into the promise. Okay, so it's not just a cookbook, Chai, Eat, Life, and Fast. It's about a Hebraic lifestyle, fasting, and the divine procession of life and order, and the Hebraic foods and healing, okay, from a Hebraic perspective. And so it helps you to line up with Yah's commands. Shuvah, Yahuwah, Revot, Yashrael, return, O Yahuwah, to the countless thousands of Israel. Music provided by Ellison Stone Music. And you can check him out at Spotify and these other sites to download his wonderful, always word-led music. Ellison Stone. And today in the background, you heard Tree of Life and Raindrop. Shalom.
Israel, we love, worship, praise Yahweh. Give him thanks by saying hallelujah.
All right, family, thank you so much for watching. I'm sorry this was so choppy. I couldn't finish my edit, literally. I just played you guys what's on my editing machine. And so there's a couple of duplicates in there, so I apologize. I really appreciate your patience in coming back on today. Please like, subscribe, and share. And I hope that these books that you can pick up for a donation on my site, they are virtual books that you can keep on your computer or your phone. They're not concrete books. They're what I give you in exchange for a donation, an offering. Okay, so it's my gift to you in exchange for you giving me an offering. So I thank you so much for those who give an offering. It helps me to do this work, and I'm continuing to do all this work. And Israel, shalom, thank you for watching. Trevor, you too, and daughter of Yah, Jalen, everybody who came in today, thank you for watching and sharing. And those of you who have the calendars, and thank you for picking them up. And it's nice to see you in the chat, Janie. So many of you, thank you for your support, because I really do love teaching. And again, I apologize for the technical stuff. It was the same thing that happened 2 weeks ago. Everything was crashing. I couldn't start up my drive with my my video on it that I'd spent all week editing. It's like it suddenly just crashed last night at 11 o'clock at night, and I was just about to render it, and then I spent all night waking up trying to render it. So I appreciate you coming and bearing with these interferences from the enemy, and also, you know, my technical error as well as part of the problem. So bless you, Baruch atah, and have a lovely week. And I should be having a video on this Shabbat coming up is Pesach. So I'm going to try and do my Pesach video this week. And I will be bringing out some more of Ellison Stone's music. It is such beautiful music. And so I'm going to do a playlist of his music you guys can listen to. I encourage you to support him. And so for sure this week, well, I'll bring out those videos, those 2 videos. And we will talk about the Pesach. And otherwise, may Yah bless you and keep you. Shalom.